Hi everyone, it's Kristen and Andrew coming to you again from Altitude Advisory. This, as you know, is, if you've been following at least, is the fourth update that we've brought to you for the stimulus packages and really anything relating to business and businesses in distress at this time. First off, as you know, the government handed out their bank measures, then they came through with some bit of small cash flow relief straight up with the PAYG. And then we came in number 3 tranche of the stimulus was the employees' $1,500 job keeper payment. Now we heard yesterday about the finalisation of rent relief. So Andrew, that's a mandatory code of conduct that's been handed down yesterday.
Yeah, so like you said, KB, the government has sort of, by how it appears, is they've sort of triaged these issues on the way through. And I know there's been a lot of landlords out there, a lot of tenants out there that have either had, going through a close down or a wind down or seen a big drop off in revenue or landlords who have had, tenants that have been suffering in that space. And so the guidance that came out yesterday is something that people have been, and business owners and property owners have been hanging out for probably a couple of weeks now, and waiting to get some certainty on that. So it was good that came out yesterday in terms of the different options that are there, or the mandatory, like you said, mandatory code of conduct that needs to be followed in negotiations in these areas.
Right?
Yeah, it is pretty clear. So probably the key parts to it are if business owners or businesses who are tenants in the JobKeeper bracket, so they're less than 50 million in turnover and they've had a more than 30% drop in revenue, basically this code of conduct comes into play. And what the code has basically said is that there needs to be obviously landlords and tenants need to negotiate in good faith in relation to that, and there's some frameworks around what that looks like. But the basic overarching principles are that there needs to be a corresponding drop in rent equivalent to the corresponding drop in revenue. So proportionate. So if there's a 50% drop in a business's revenue, then there's an expectation that there will be 50% rental reduction for the term of the pandemic crisis that we're in at present. So
does that then, Andrew, come back to be the term of the JobKeeper as it stands at
this
point at 6 months? Potentially be longer?
That's what we're working on that same timeline for the period of that thing. But obviously, landlords and tenants are free to negotiate outside that time if they agree. This code of conduct is relevant for what's been announced in terms of those timelines. And like I say, they need to negotiate in good faith based on their circumstances and come up with a solution that both works for the landlord and works for the tenant at the same time.
Yeah, very good. So our clients, we've had heaps of clients asking us questions.
Yep.
We've got plenty of our clients that are landlords, and equally have plenty that are leaseholders, I suppose.
Yeah, yep.
So can you tell us, if you are a tenant, how do you go about negotiating?
Well, like I said, first of all, you got to obviously make contact with your landlord. But if you can demonstrate, in good faith that you're entitled to the JobKeeper, then basically this code of conduct comes into play, and there's a mutually agreed rental reduction that is applicable. So the actual terms of that is there's a mandatory rental waiver amount, and then there is an amount that can be called a rental deferral. So the rental waiver can't be less than 50% of the reduction. So I'll give you an example. If somebody's paying $10,000 a month in rent to a landlord, mm-hmm. and their turnover drops by 60%, for example, their monthly rental will drop by $6,000 a month. Now, $3,000 of that, or half of that, must be basically waived for the term, whilst the other 50% can be what we call deferred, and the landlord is entitled to charge that once we get to the other side of this pandemic. So the term that they can recover that is it can't be less than 24 months or the term of the lease, whichever is the greater. So basically that any deferred rent component for this 6 months can be clawed back over the next 2 years in equal monthly instalments.
Excellent. So if you do have 1 month that's low, you qualify for ongoing. Okay.
Yep.
So just like the JobKeeper rules.
Yeah, correct.
So if you are a landlord, what things are we expecting landlords to have to give up or at least negotiate on?
Yeah, so this is a tough one for landlords in terms of the whole scenario. You know, they're in a difficult situation. You know, basically under the frameworks as it sits at the minute, you can't basically terminate somebody's lease, and you know, it's unfortunate. You know, and I get that there's going to be a lot of frustration from many of them in what this looks like. But you can't kick somebody out. You can't charge interest on any late payments or deferred rents or any admin fees or any of those sort of things on that. You can't draw into any rental bonds or guarantees that you might have to claw back any of that sort of stuff. So the basic framework that the government outlined as part of this code of conduct is that it's been done on the premise that we're all in this together, and landlords and business owners are in this together, and therefore there should be a sharing of the burden of this downturn. And so I guess the difficult scenario is that landlords have to, as much as they don't like it, are going to have to come to the party and agree what that looks like with their tenants. The other thing is that the government have said that there's an expectation that if there is obviously reductions in outgoings, whether they be council rates, if there's further reductions in land tax, if there's reductions in insurance or whatever it might be, they expect that those savings are passed on to to tenants as well in a proportionate way.
Good. So
and also the bank stuff as well. So passing on any principal incentives that the banks might have given them.
Yeah, it opens up a whole can of worms, I suppose, when it comes to the clients that we have that are both landlord and tenant.
Yeah.
So we have ownership in a super fund, for instance, and a business leases at arm's length a property. Can you talk to us about the impacts of that situation?
Yeah, so I mean the framework when you own a property in a super fund and you rent it to your own business is that all those dealings always needed to be done on a commercial arm's length basis. And we haven't really had too much guidance in terms of what that looks like regarding the negotiation. Now we've obviously got that with this code of conduct that's in play. But the extension of that is the ATO have already come out and said that, even though these amounts may be, less than what is normal market rent, they've said that there's going to be no compliance breaches or no enforcement activities on super funds that do adopt this measure with their business owners and the tenants in that respect.
Yeah, and they don't have to be related parties either. So this applies to all. Yeah, lots of people owned commercial property and some residential too in their super fund. So that's good to know.
Correct.
What we are speaking about is commercial property.
Yes. Nothing in the resi space that I've seen as yet. So this is specifically related to commercial tenancies.
Yeah. Is there anything else then that you think in your investigations that our clients would need to know?
No, look, the big thing around it, Kristen, is that this is partly around risk and so forth, and I know the property council didn't really want to come to the party on this in terms of the negotiations, but the government, the way they got to the party is the government said if you don't come and agree to a framework, is that we're just going to introduce measures that if tenants can't pay, they can just terminate the lease. So therefore, then the landlord is obviously then running the risk of not only having somebody that doesn't pay, their rent for a few months, but then being able to terminate the lease and getting nothing and being left without a tenant as well. So I think there needs to be a little bit of commerciality that's applied here from landlords that, this is going to be a painful 6 months or more, whatever it is, but they're going to be much better off having a long-term tenant in place, paying them something over an extended period of time than having nothing. So, the tenants can't terminate the lease. They need to, behave in good faith and honour the terms of their lease and things like that. So it actually gives certainty and a bit of control to both sides of the equation, being tenant and landlord.
Yeah, and the government have been quite smart in the way that they've rolled these things out. It really is, so that we can pick up in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months,
Correct,
where we left off, rather than back to square one.
Correct.
Another really important thing before we go is LRBAs and those limited recourse borrowings that people might have against property in their super fund, usually under quite stringent rules. Arm's length rent must be paid so you can repay these loans. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so again, coming back to that ATO guidance, that's, if there's loan repayments that can be ceased for 6 months in line with the previous government announcements, all those things can be passed on to the tenants and should be applied in that way. So basically the consistent framework all the way through, whether you've got, borrowing in a fund or whether you just have straight out ownership. So,
good. So speak to your bank and make sure that you are adhering to those bank rules.
Yep.
Code of conduct next.
Correct. Speak to the bank. Be aware of the code of conduct. It's available on the website. We'll post it up on our Facebook page so people can have a look at the link. And if you're not sure, please give us a call or drop us an email and we can fill in some gaps.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrew.
Cool. Thanks, team.